Is the Quinfall the biggest scam in MMO history? No, probably not, but it is the biggest scam of 2025. I originally avoided playing this game because, honestly, it was going for $25 as an early access game, and after seeing everyone say that it was complete dog water, I decided to hold off. However, these days the game is selling for as little as $2. I'm not kidding. And I figured for the price of a McDonald's coffee, I might as well hop in and explore what this game has to offer. Now, the Quinfall was sold as an ambitious MMO developed by Vawreak Technology, promising an absolutely insanely massive open world spanning across thousands of kilometers, claiming to have over 18 million interactable objects. Now, that sounds impressive until you realize that the game was reportedly being developed by a small indie team of 5 to 10 developers in just about 3 years. These days, they claim to have a team of 60, but still, the math ain't mathing for such a large game to be created in such a small time frame and by such a small team. Especially from the ground up, and that's because, you'll never guess this, but they didn't make it from the ground up. So about a year ago, a YouTuber by the name of No.1 found that a bunch of the assets being used in the promotional screenshots and videos were actually pre-made assets that you can find online for purchase. Now, I don't really mind games using assets to help build their world or to create a more immersive environment, especially when the assets are used to emphasize or highlight the world that they've already created. That's fine. However, when your entire game seems to be store-bought assets, well, then we start to run into something that people take problems with. Especially because they seem to have used so many different store-bought assets that the quality and differences between graphics in certain areas of the game are so tangible that it doesn't even feel like you're playing the same game. This added on to the fact that the developers failed to provide substantial gameplay footage or proof of promised features, such as supporting 10,000 players per server. Their Discord responses were generally vague, relying on verbal assurances rather than demonstrations, and the closed beta was under NDA, which limited any public scrutiny. The game's website and marketing materials contained AI-generated text and generic content, which just further destroyed the trust that the players had with the upcoming title. And on top of all of that, the Turkish developers Vawreak were reportedly using stock photos of some random office to pretend that they actually had a real location. All of that and about a million other reasons why this game is probably not to be trusted. I decided to actually jump into Quinfall because despite all of that, the game actually did release as early access, and to be honest, the game does feature the vast majority of things that they initially promised, such as an extremely large map, potentially the biggest to ever be seen in the MMO genre, tons of skills and professions and activities from dungeons to raids to PvP. But the real problem is, how did they manage to fit all of that into one game that was developed in just 3 years by a small team? Trust me, asset flipping and AI-generated responses are not the only shortcuts that Quinfall has taken in order to accomplish this. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor. I recently discovered a fun new MMORPG, Ragnarok X Next Generation. This is a new, faithful adaptation of the historic MMO franchise, Ragnarok Online. Available on both mobile and PC, it was just expanded to release in both North and South America and Western Europe on May 8th. Ragnarok Next Generation revives the golden age of MMOs with 6 iconic classes, in-depth job progression, a player-driven economy with a no-pay-to-win mentality. And this has all been rebuilt for the modern gamer to enjoy. You can expect the classic Ragnarok guild vs guild, family, and social systems to return, and you can team up and forge alliances and relive iconic battles. On top of that, you can farm and craft your own items or hunt down challenging bosses, meaning there's something to do for every type of player. Ragnarok Next Generation enhances the beloved Ragnarok Online style, with modern 3D visuals preserving its signature style and charm. But this game isn't just for the Ragnarok veterans, it's made for everyone. Newbies can get guided onboarding to teach them the ins and outs of the game, while the veterans can dive straight into the hardcore builds. On top of all of that, Ragnarok is currently hosting the ultimate Guild Leader Showdown, where you can win $10,000 in cash, an iPhone 16 Pro Max, an iPad Air, and more. You can find out more about this competition in the links down below. With over 20 million downloads already, it's safe to say that this game has seen some insane success in the Asian markets. So what are you waiting for? Use the link at the top of the description or in the pinned comment to join me and many others for an amazing adventure in Ragnarok X Next Generation. So this is the Quinfall. You're first asked to choose a server location and afterwards to choose a channel. There are 2 options, one is labeled PvE and the other is labeled PvP. It seems like you get a few bonuses to experience if you choose the PvP server, but you still get some experience bonuses for choosing PvE. Anyway, I chose PvE and pressed create character. Now, there's nothing really inherently wrong with Quinfall's character creation, it just feels like a cheaper version of every modern MMO. It has a sort of janky artificial intelligence-like feel, even the user interface kind of felt off. It's hard to put into words, but this will be a common theme throughout this video. It looks halfway decent from an outsider's perspective or a first glance, but once you actually interact with it, you understand all of the problems underneath the hood. Quinfall is like the MMO version of an IKEA showroom. It looks great, it's decorated nicely, it seems like a fun place to hang out, but then you realize all the screws are loose, the table is actually from a different store, and all the plants are fake. With that being said, there is a ridiculous amount of customization options, including the ability to make your character's skin literally shine with brightness. And you can also give him a trypophobia sort of texture. Seriously, this creeps me out. They also feature a system called Bones, where you can basically choose these little blue dots to change the proportions of every area of your body. I thought I was going to be able to do some ridiculous things here, but they were pretty restrictive with how much these nodes can actually impact the proportions. However, I did manage to make his arms shaped like chicken legs, so I'll take the wins where I can. Afterwards, I found a section called Head Bright. I don't know either. But here, I was able to place a perfect circle on my character's face, and I could change it to whatever color I wanted. After that, I placed 5 tattoos directly on top of each other, all on my character's stomach. After that, I gave him some luscious locks and colored them rainbow, and I was finally happy with my appearance. This is Woke Jason Momoa, also known as Scamdot. So I pressed play to finally get into the game and find out what Quinfall is all about. You're first met with a voice-acted screenshot collage, which tells you the story of Quinfall. I mostly ignored this and I just pet my cat because she's basically the best, but I'm pretty sure this is an AI-generated image. I can't 100% prove that, but it definitely seems like it. Especially because these screenshots don't actually feature any characters and they're just generic landscape shots, but who knows, maybe they really paid artists to make this. I'm banking on probably not. Anyway, I finally just pressed skipped and I was met with this loading screen before, jump scare. I kind of forgot what my character looked like. Why do they spawn you in at like 2x zoom on your character's face? That's hilarious. Anyway, this is Quinfall. The game immediately starts giving you pop-ups to explain quite literally how every single step of the user interface functions. There seems to be no actual way to skip this process, so you kind of just have to keep clicking to go through it all. I noticed my webcam was lagging immensely, so I dropped the graphics a little bit, and that seemed to fix things for the time being. And otherwise, the user interface is pretty standard. It looks very similar to most MMOs. Though I have to admit, this command tutorial on the left indicating how to move and jump felt a little cheap. It kind of stuck out like a sore thumb in comparison to the rest of the UI. Anyway, it's action combat, so you can click to swing. The Quinfall also does this weird thing where you have to press the control key to switch between using your cursor or interacting with your camera and moving. It's awful. You constantly get stuck, and after every time you load in and out of a new area, you have to press the control key again to once again literally take control of your character. So I followed these blue arrows forward to a completely unnecessary and large blue circle, which then led me even further until I came across this Bone Crusher orc, which looks very similar to the orcs that you might find in Throne and Liberty. And this is combat. Every swing has a very intense animation lock, the enemies can stagger you when they hit you, and you can also click and hold your right mouse button to do a heavy attack. All in all, that wasn't quite enough combat to form an opinion, but it definitely doesn't feel great. It feels like action combat from the early to mid 2000s with a heavy reliance on animation stalling to add a fake sort of sense of weight to it. Anyway, I continued following these giant blue circles on the ground when it really struck me how familiar this user interface actually looked. And it dawned on me, especially the nameplate and these symbols, isn't this just the Black Desert Online user interface? I mean, it's not a one-to-one copy, but it's damn close. Like, way too close to call it just a coincidence. Anyway, after a few more blue circles, an interface popped up indicating that I can choose between a couple of skills. As you can see, there are a ton of different weapon types that you can level up in, and it just now really dawned on me that I hadn't actually chosen a class. So obviously it's a classless system where you can level each weapon type separately. I chose the Mighty Swing ability and placed it in my action bar and used it to easily take out another one of the orcs from Throne and Liberty. And afterwards, I was asked to use the G key in order to participate in an activity known as bending. That sounds really interesting, but it's actually just the crouch function. I have no idea why they decided to call it bending. I'm not doing the limbo, but okay. My next task was to climb up this vine to the top of this mountain. But instead, I decided to try and see if I could jump my way there, which surprisingly actually worked. The jump function definitely gets a little bugged out in the walls of the mountain, but yeah, I managed to just jump my way to the top. So fuck your tutorial, Quinfall. I do things my own way. And after that, you're met with the standard title into the amazing view of the game and the world. Although the lighting completely changes as this animation is obviously recorded at a completely different time in the game, but after that, you're asked to choose a character bonus, which is kinda unique. Apparently, you can choose one bonus from each of these categories, which will increase your experience gain in that category. So I chose woodcutting, fishing, extra damage to mobs, and PvE bonuses, before waiting at another loading screen and finally being plopped into the main game. You're spawned into this sort of dock area and you're prompted to talk to Captain Thorn, who has a question mark above his head. He gives you a quest to equip a fishing rod that he gives you, which I did, and that got me to level 2. And after that, you have to go fish. You press E and wait for this blue circle to fill up, and then you have to press space at just the right time in order to actually catch a fish. In my inventory, I found a fresh character buff that would increase my experience gain for 15 days, and also my inventory was filled with one of every weapon. I guess so I could try them all out. None of them were actually better than the weapon I currently had equipped, however, so I just stuck with my two-handed sword. Next, I decided to take a better look at the world map. And I'm not gonna lie, it actually is quite well done. It's a copy of BDO's world map in terms of design. It's almost a one-to-one copy, actually, but it's nicely laid out. And it definitely is massive. However, every time I opened the world map, this actually once again caused my webcam to lag. So because of that, I decided this game isn't optimized well enough for me to actually have my webcam on at the same time, which is a strange problem to have, and I understand you're all very disappointed that you won't be able to see my beautiful face for the rest of the video, but it is what it is. However, it does seem like Quinfall actually did deliver in terms of having one of the largest MMO maps to ever exist, and that's somewhat impressive, even if the game is completely made out of store-bought assets and every aspect seems to be copied from somewhere else. Anyway, I made my way forward towards my quest marker, and for the next few moments, I just ran back and forth between some of the NPCs in town, including the pet keeper who taught me to summon my pet bee, which I did, and then I fed him some food. Afterwards, I met the blacksmith, and I learned how to repair items, which got me to level 4. I believe the max level is 50, so with the rate I'm leveling up already, I'm assuming it doesn't actually take too long to get there. The quest after that sent me off towards the stable master, where I was told to buy a lasso, and then I had to use said lasso on a horse practice dummy, and this somehow resulted in me having a real horse. So I have a mount now, I guess. I was also given some horse equipment, which I equipped, and this got me to level 5. Okay. Now, Quinfall features the exact same traveling options as BDO, except that BDO doesn't have as large of a fast travel system as Quinfall does. But you can set a location on any road on the map, and by pressing T, your character will auto-run to that location. One thing I should also mention at this moment is that movement feels like complete garbage. First of all, you can't move, like, at all, while controlling your cursor at the same time. You get locked. And secondly, you can't look in a different direction than you're currently moving. Whichever way your camera is facing is the direction that your character will be moving. So if you were running away from something and you wanted to see if it was still chasing you, you would have to literally flip around 180 degrees, check, and then flip around again to keep running. This is literally unforgivable in 2025. Please allow my camera to operate at least somewhat separately from movement. Anyway, I continued doing some quests for Captain Thorn. He told me to practice combat on these target dummies, which seemed like a silly tutorial mechanic that's totally unnecessary considering I already participated in combat in the actual tutorial. But I digress. I used another skill point to acquire another ability before talking to this guard who sent me on my first real quest. I had to investigate a nearby enemy encampment. So I set my auto-run location to the closest point in the path to my quest marker, and off I went. As I got close, my objective changed to disarming traps in the area. This location was jam-packed with level 3 enemies, and it's honestly just another copy from BDO. They have these enemy locations located all over the map, and they're indicated by the exact same indicators that you'll find in the BDO world map. And then you can grind at these locations or do quests like I'm doing now. I first disabled all 3 of the traps, and then I was told I needed to kill 20 of these guys, as well as get 3 items from them, which acts as a sort of uncommon drop, and afterwards I was told to kill the champion. All of this got me to level 10. So I fast traveled back to the town I had originally spawned in and received another quest to venture forth to a bigger town known as Meadow. I originally thought that I was going to have to run to this new location as I had never been there before, but apparently you can just fast travel there as well. So I teleported to Meadow, which is a slightly larger town with more buildings and NPCs, and you're introduced to Watcher Eleanor, who will be your main quest giver for this location. Once again, she has you running around and introducing yourself to random NPCs. Most of these are the same NPCs that you actually met in the town prior, such as the potion maker and the blacksmith, so it seems a little repetitive, but I made it through. I was also shown the market, where I guess you can buy and sell items to other players. I took a quick look at some of the most expensive weapons. They were legendary quality, going for hundreds of millions of coins. At this point, I didn't have any real reference for if that was a lot of coins or not, but looking in my inventory, it appeared I had about 100,000 coins, so considering I've barely played, it's definitely a more inflated type of economy in Quinfall. Afterwards, I was told to go examine another location about 1 kilometer away. I was gonna just use my horse and auto-run there. However, on the map, I noticed there was this portal, which once again, I could actually just fast travel to. Anyway, in this location, I had to do another myriad of these quests involving fighting 20 enemies and getting some rare drops. These new monsters were level 7, so they were a little bit more difficult and took a little longer to kill. I accidentally attacked a group which had a 2-star enemy, and I had to run away because I was no match for this guy. I tried using a potion, but I accidentally pressed Control, which brought up my cursor and locked me into place. I struggled a little bit more to get away, but I eventually died. So I hit respawn at the nearest point and was teleported back to Meadow, with seemingly no other real penalties. Anyway, I fast traveled back and finished up my quest, which took about 10 minutes, and it got me to level 12. I handed in the quest, which rewarded me with a full set of rare quality armor, and I decided to sell a bunch of the things in my inventory because it was already almost completely full. If you know me and you watch my videos, you'll know that inventory space is one of my biggest pet peeves in MMOs, because it's such an arbitrary and fake restriction that most games sell you the solution to, and the Quinfall is no exception in this regard. But after that, I was told to look for a marked home. I guess each town has homes that you can buy, and this acts as the in-game housing system. Once again, it's another promise that they've delivered on, but it's not good. At the front door of one of these marked homes, you're asked to pay rent. I guess you pay this price every 10 days in order to keep ownership of the home. I paid, and upon entering your home, you're asked to put down a few different workbenches, and this is how you're going to interact with most of the crafting and skilling progression systems. Now, the lighting in my home was really weird, and it actually colored all of my character's armor a much darker shade. And on top of that, placing these workstations was not an easy task. It seemed like they didn't really fit into most of the spots, and the controls to move around were hardly intuitive. Placing my cooking station actually got me to level 14, but aligning with everything else so far in Quinfall, this was janky, to say the least. Anyway, I stepped outside of my house and a pop-up informed me that an arena battle was about to take place. Considering I've barely seen any other players at this point, I figured this would be a good opportunity for me to interact with some other people. It says we'd be playing a stone protection and that this was for people between the levels of 10 and 19. So I loaded into the arena. Apparently, Stone Protection is a game with 3 teams where you have to capture stones and hold on to them, sort of like a game of domination. Unfortunately, so far it seemed like I was the only person on the red team. I mean, there's still a minute and a half to go until the match would start, so hopefully I'd get some teammates. However, I brought up the scoreboard and it seemed like there was potentially nobody else even playing. I might be the only person in this instance. Well, I patiently waited the remaining minute, and to my surprise, the game began. Maybe I'm just not able to see other players from other teams on the scoreboard. Surely the game wouldn't start or even begin with me being the only person in the arena, right? Well, I captured 1 stone, and then I captured another, and then I captured another, and then I captured all of them. Still, the scoreboard just shows me. I ran to the center of the map to wait and see if anyone else would join. I'd really like to fight some other players if possible, but no. At this point, the red team's score was just ticking up, and I was assuming that once it reached a certain threshold, I would win and get my rewards. But the score just kept ticking on and on. Past 1,000 points, past 2,000 points. So I guess there's no winning threshold. You have to just wait until the timer runs out. Well, I've already sunk about 8 minutes into this, so really, what's 2 more? I zoomed in on my character's overly bright face with a circle in the middle and blush on the cheeks to wait out the remaining time. And voila, I finished the match victorious. Who would have guessed it? I was able to claim 3 reward chests before being teleported back to Meadow, where I opened up the chest to receive gear that was worse than what I currently had equipped. Great. Anyway, at this point, I ran to the next quest location, which had me again participating in the exact same kill 20 and collect certain items from enemies that I've been doing the whole time. Literally, this is just copy and paste at this point. Oh yeah, I also hopped into a dungeon which you can enter at any time, either solo or with a team. and I ran around the dungeon fighting scorpions. In fact, at one point, I think I almost pulled the entire dungeon worth of scorpions, and I basically mowed them all down in seconds using my abilities. This was actually kind of fun, though I highly doubt it's the intended way to play the game, as killing all of these mobs granted me a crazy amount of experience. And on top of that, it seems like they all respawn in a matter of like 30 seconds. So you could just sit here and pull an entire dungeon's worth of mobs over and over, and probably power level to 50 pretty quickly. But that concludes my time spent in the Scamfall. Please do not purchase this game. It's not even worth the $2 that you could have spent on a McDonald's coffee. The Quinfall is clearly attempting to do everything. It's trying to emphasize a quantity over quality methodology that just isn't working. Everything about this game from the moment you start playing to the second you log off feels janky. Nothing ever works quite how you want it to. The world is clearly AI generated, purchased, and uninspired. The questing is copy and paste, and every system I interacted with was copied from another game. Honestly, I can't believe there were people who actually spent $20 or more when this originally came out. The Quinfall is BDO from Wish if Wish was from Temu. The Quinfall is Throne and Liberty re-rendered through ChatGPT. The Quinfall is the Nigerian prince of MMOs. Please, don't fall for this. Anyway, folks, I want to say a massive thank you to every one of you who made it to the end of the video. Don't forget a like, a comment, a sub. Those things help a bunch. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider becoming a channel member. Anyways, I will catch you all in the next one. Later.